Breaking negative cycles starts with a fundamental truth: you are in control of your life. It's so easy to fall into the habit of blaming others for where we are or what we're going through. We say, if only they had treated me better, or if only I had the resources or opportunities they had. It's tempting to look outside ourselves for the cause of our struggles. But here's the truth: the power to change is always in your hands. Personal responsibility means acknowledging that no matter what's happened to you, you have a role in where you are today. This doesn't mean blaming yourself for everything. It means recognizing that you are the one who holds the key to your freedom. The first step in breaking any cycle is owning where you are and taking full responsibility for your actions, your decisions, and how you respond to the world around you. When you begin to accept responsibility, you stop living in a state of victimhood. The moment you take accountability for your life, you stop waiting for someone else to change or for circumstances to shift in your favor. You realize that you don't need permission to change. It's your life and you have the power to rewrite the narrative. That's liberating. It's freeing. You're not stuck in the story that's been handed to you. You are the one who gets to decide how the story goes from here on out. And taking responsibility isn't just about what you do when things are going well. It's about how you act when things go wrong. How do you respond when you fall short? Do you deflect, make excuses, or blame others? Or do you stand up, own it, and say, I made a mistake, but I will learn from this and I will grow? Accountability is about recognizing your flaws, your mistakes, and your missteps without hiding from them. It's about saying, I can do better, and I will do better, instead of allowing shame to keep you paralyzed in the same negative cycle. It's also about being honest with yourself about your habits, your choices, and the people you surround yourself with. If you're constantly finding yourself in unhealthy situations or relationships, ask yourself, what am I contributing to this? Are you allowing toxic people into your life because you haven't set healthy boundaries? Are you staying in environments that feed into your negativity because it feels comfortable, even though it's hurting you? Personal responsibility is about looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I have the power to change my circumstances, but it starts with me. When you take responsibility, you start to make empowered choices. Instead of feeling like a victim of your circumstances, you become an architect of your own future. And this doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean the road is without bumps or setbacks. But when you hold yourself accountable, you know that no matter what happens, you are the one who has the power to rise again, to try again, to keep moving forward. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful tools we have to break negative cycles. It's easy to think of forgiveness as letting someone off the hook, as excusing the harm that was done to us. But in reality, forgiveness is not about the other person, it's about you. It's about taking back your peace, your power, and your freedom. When you hold on to anger, resentment, or hurt, you are allowing the past to control you. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It eats away at your heart, your soul, and your ability to move forward. It keeps you tethered to the very thing that hurt you. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is a way to release that grip. It's about deciding that you will no longer be defined by someone else's actions. No matter how deep the wound, no matter how justified your pain, forgiveness is the key that unlocks your ability to heal. Let me be clear, forgiveness does not mean you forget. It does not mean you stay in an unhealthy or dangerous situation. Forgiveness is not about excusing what was done to you, nor is it about pretending like it didn't hurt. Forgiveness is the conscious decision to stop letting the hurt define you, to stop allowing the anger and bitterness to control your life. It's about reclaiming your own heart, your own peace of mind, and your own future. Forgiveness also doesn't mean reconciliation. Sometimes forgiving someone means accepting that the relationship has changed or even ended. It's about recognizing that your healing does not depend on the other person's apology or acknowledgement. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. When you forgive, you free yourself from the emotional prison you've been living in, even if the other person never changes. It's also crucial to understand that forgiving yourself is just as important as forgiving others. We often carry guilt, shame, or regret from our past actions, decisions we made when we were hurting, confused, or unaware of our own value. Self-forgiveness is an essential part of breaking negative cycles. We need to release the shame we hold against ourselves and recognize that we are deserving of grace, just like anyone else. You cannot move forward if you're constantly looking backward, blaming yourself for past mistakes. Forgiving yourself is a powerful act of self-love and liberation. Forgiveness takes time, and it takes courage. It's a journey, not a one-time decision. Some days you may feel like you've forgiven, and the next day the anger or pain may resurface. That's okay. It doesn't mean you haven't forgiven, it means you're still healing. The beauty of forgiveness is that it's a process, a daily choice to release the weight of the past and choose peace over pain. It's about deciding that you are no longer going to let the actions of others hold your future hostage. When you forgive, you're not just changing your relationship with the person who hurt you, you're changing your relationship with yourself. You're choosing to stop carrying the heavy burden of resentment. And in doing so, you make space for new beginnings, for growth, and for the kind of love and joy you deserve. Generational patterns are powerful, often invisible forces that shape our lives in ways we may not even realize. They are the behaviors, beliefs, and habits that get passed down from one generation to the next, often without us questioning them. These patterns can be positive, but more often than not, they're negative cycles of trauma, addiction, abuse, poverty, or unhealthy relationships that get handed down like heirlooms generation after generation. We inherit them not just from our parents, but from our grandparents, great-grandparents, and so on. And if we're not careful, we can become prisoners to these inherited patterns, repeating the same mistakes and suffering the same struggles as those before us. It's easy to think this is just who I am. This is just the way things have always been, but what we don't always understand is that we don't have to repeat the past. We don't have to be bound by the dysfunctions, the fears, and the limitations that were passed down to us. We have the power to break the cycle, to choose differently, and to create a new legacy for ourselves and future generations. But it begins with acknowledging these patterns and understanding their influence on our lives. Sometimes these generational patterns are subtle. You may not even realize they're there until you start paying attention to your own behaviors and choices. Do you find yourself constantly repeating the same unhealthy relationship dynamics? Perhaps you're following the example of a parent or grandparent who struggled with communication or who stayed in toxic relationships because they didn't know how to set boundaries. Do you find yourself living with the same financial habits, spending without saving or avoiding budgeting because that's how you saw it done growing up? Or maybe it's something deeper like a pattern of emotional unavailability, neglect, or addiction. These behaviors feel normal to us because they've been normalized by those who came before us. But just because something feels normal doesn't mean it's right, and it doesn't mean it's healthy. We must wake up to these patterns and take responsibility for the way they're shaping our lives. Breaking generational patterns requires awareness or willingness to look at our past, not to blame or shame, but to understand. We have to ask ourselves, why do I respond this way? Where did I learn this behavior? Is this the life I want to create, or is it simply what I've been taught to expect? Once we begin to see these patterns for what they are, we can begin to make different choices. It may not be easy. It may feel like you're going against the tide of your upbringing, like you're fighting against something that's been ingrained in your very identity. But the power lies in your ability to choose, in your ability to say, I refuse to let this pattern define my future. Whether it's deciding to break the cycle of addiction, stepping away from a toxic family dynamic, or learning to communicate with love and respect instead of fear or anger, you can create new ways of being. It takes courage, commitment, and consistency, but it is more than possible. Breaking generational patterns also means that we need to heal the wounds that often keep these cycles going. Most negative patterns are rooted in deep pain, trauma, unresolved grief, and unhealed emotional wounds create fertile ground for these cycles to take root and grow. For instance, if someone grew up in an environment where love was conditional or scarce, they may struggle as an adult to form healthy relationships or to feel worthy of love. Similarly, if a person witnessed their parents or caregivers struggle with addiction, they may, without realizing it, mimic those same behaviors in their own lives. This is where healing comes into play. Healing is the antidote to the negative cycles we inherit. It requires us to face the pain of the past, to acknowledge the impact it's had on us, and to intentionally work toward breaking free from it. Healing doesn't mean forgetting the past, it means learning from it and using that wisdom to create a healthier, more empowered future. Additionally, the choices we make today have the power to affect not only our lives, but the lives of those who come after us. By breaking negative generational patterns, we don't just change our own future, we change the trajectory of future generations. When we decide to break free from cycles of abuse, neglect, or poverty, we create a new blueprint for the generations that follow. We become the ones who change the legacy, who teach the younger ones that they don't have to be limited by the past. The truth is, breaking generational patterns isn't just about us. It's about giving our children, our grandchildren, and even our communities the gift of a different story. When we step up, when we face the difficult work of breaking these patterns, we create a future where the next generation is free to make their own choices unhindered by the weight of the past. And in that freedom, they too will have the power to build new, healthier legacies of their own. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. In a world that prizes strength, independence, and perfection, vulnerability can be seen as a weakness. We're taught to put on a brave face, to hide our pain, and to present a version of ourselves that's strong, flawless, and unshakable. But what if I told you that vulnerability is actually one of the greatest strengths you can possess? True strength doesn't come from hiding your emotions or pretending you have it all together. It comes from being able to stand in the truth of who you are without shame or fear of judgment. Vulnerability is the courage to be seen as you truly are, to be open about your struggles, your imperfections, and your deepest fears. And while this may feel terrifying at first, it is only through embracing vulnerability that we can truly heal, grow, and connect with others on a deep, authentic level. When we open up, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we create a space for real connection. In a world where many of us are living behind carefully constructed walls, vulnerability allows us to break down those barriers. It's easy to relate to someone who seems perfect, but it's when we see someone's true self, their struggles, their pain, their triumphs, that we are able to truly connect. Vulnerability is the bridge that links our hearts. It allows us to see and be seen for who we truly are, and in doing so, it creates a sense of shared humanity. We realize that we are not alone in our experiences, and that connection is what provides the foundation for healing and growth. When we hide our emotions or keep our struggles to ourselves, we carry a heavy burden. It becomes exhausting to maintain the illusion of having it all together. Vulnerability lightens that load. It's the willingness to share your pain, your doubts, and your challenges with others, knowing that you don't have to face them alone. There's incredible power in saying, I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. When we show up as our true selves, we give others permission to do the same. Vulnerability is a way of saying, I am enough just as I am. The strength in vulnerability is also rooted in healing. When we acknowledge our struggles, when we allow ourselves to feel pain or fear, we start the process of healing. Emotional wounds cannot heal if we keep pretending they don't exist. Vulnerability is the first step toward mending those wounds. It means allowing ourselves to face our hurt, our grief, and our trauma head on, rather than burying it deep inside. And while it can be uncomfortable and even painful, it is only through this process that we can truly begin to move forward. Healing starts when we let ourselves feel, and vulnerability makes that possible. In relationships, vulnerability is essential for building trust. We cannot form deep, meaningful connections if we are always holding part of ourselves back. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we invite others to do the same. This shared openness builds a foundation of trust, where both people feel safe to share their hearts without fear of rejection or judgment. Vulnerability is the key to intimacy, not just with others, but with ourselves. It allows us to truly understand who we are, what we need, and what we deserve in our relationships. There's also immense strength in being vulnerable with yourself. It takes courage to face your own insecurities, your flaws, and your weaknesses. It's so much easier to live in denial, to push down those parts of ourselves that we're ashamed of. But when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in front of the mirror, we begin to accept and love ourselves for who we truly are. Self-compassion is born from vulnerability, and it is only through self-compassion that we can truly move past our self-imposed limitations and grow into our fullest potential. Vulnerability also plays a crucial role in personal growth. In order to grow, we must first acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, that there is room for improvement, and that we have weaknesses we need to address. Vulnerability is the foundation of growth because it creates a space for self-reflection and honest assessment. It allows us to look at ourselves without shame, to identify the areas where we need to change, and to ask for the help we need. When we are open to learning and growing, we are essentially being vulnerable to the possibility of change. Moreover, vulnerability is a powerful force when it comes to forging resilience. Life will knock us down, and we will face setbacks, losses, and disappointments. The key to resilience isn't denying the pain or pretending we're invincible. It's acknowledging the pain, embracing it, and then rising again. Vulnerability doesn't mean being weak in the face of adversity. It means being strong enough to feel the pain, to experience the fear, and to keep moving forward despite it. Resilience is not about being unaffected by life's challenges. It's about embracing the challenge and using it as a stepping stone for growth. Finally, there's an immense power in the vulnerability of asking for help. Many of us feel that we should be able to handle everything on our own, that asking for help is a sign of weakness. But the truth is, asking for help takes incredible strength. It takes humility, self-awareness, and the courage to admit that we cannot do everything alone. Whether it's seeking support from a friend, a mentor, or a professional, reaching out for help is one of the most vulnerable and powerful things we can do. It's an acknowledgement that we are not meant to do life in isolation, and that sometimes we need others to help us navigate the storm. In every way, vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a symbol of authentic strength. It's the strength to face the truth, the courage to show up as our real selves, and the power to transform our lives through healing, connection, and growth. There's a power in truth, but it's not always an easy power to embrace. The truth has a way of shaking us, disturbing us, and making us feel vulnerable in ways we'd rather avoid. It can feel uncomfortable, like a raw wound that refuses to heal. We often try to bury it, run from it, or cover it up with distractions or excuses, because facing the truth means confronting parts of ourselves, our lives, and our past that we prefer to ignore. But I'm here to tell you that the truth, no matter how painful, is the key to your freedom. We live in a world where we've been conditioned to avoid pain, to hide from uncomfortable realities. We're taught that pain is something to be avoided at all costs, that if we face the truth, we'll somehow break. But what if I told you that the only way to heal is to face the truth head on? The only way to move forward is to stop running from the very thing that could set you free. It's not easy, and it's not quick, but it is necessary. When we avoid the truth, we stay stuck. We build walls around our hearts, around our minds, and around our lives, convincing ourselves that if we don't look at the problem, it will somehow go away. But here's the reality: the truth doesn't go anywhere. It sits there quietly, eating away at us from the inside. It manifests in our relationships, our decisions, and our emotional health. When we refuse to face the truth, we give it power over us. It controls us, dictates our choices, and keeps us trapped in cycles of denial and avoidance. But when we face the truth, when we have the courage to confront it, we reclaim our power. Truth is liberating, even if it's painful. It forces us to take ownership of our circumstances, to stop blaming others, and to recognize the role we've played in creating our current reality. And while that can be uncomfortable, it is also empowering. Facing the truth is not about being punished. It's about freeing yourself from the chains of denial and self-deception. It's about choosing authenticity over comfort, growth over stagnation. One of the most painful truths we must face is often the truth about ourselves. It's easy to point fingers at others, to blame our circumstances, or to focus on external factors, but the real work begins when we take a long, hard look in the mirror. What are the patterns you keep repeating in your life? Why do you find yourself stuck in toxic relationships? Why do you keep making the same mistakes despite promising yourself you wouldn't? The answers to these questions often lie in the uncomfortable truths about our own choices, behaviors, and fears. And while those truths may sting at first, they are the stepping stones to growth. The sooner we confront the truth about ourselves, the sooner we can begin to heal and change. Facing the truth also requires us to confront the pain of our past. It's easy to suppress past hurts, to bury trauma, grief, and regret. We often think that by avoiding these painful memories, we're protecting ourselves. But in reality, we're only prolonging the suffering. The past doesn't just go away because we ignore it. It festers in the background, influencing our present actions, beliefs, and relationships. Facing the truth means acknowledging the things that have hurt us, the ways in which we've been wronged, and the trauma we've carried with us. It's not about dwelling in the past, but about freeing ourselves from its grip. In relationships, facing the truth is crucial for healing and growth. How many times have we stayed in situations or with people who didn't respect us, who didn't love us the way we deserve to be loved? We often stay because we're afraid of what the truth might reveal, or because we believe the lie that this is all we're worth. But facing the truth means realizing that we deserve better, that we deserve love, respect, and kindness. It means walking away from situations that drain us, hurt us, or hold us back, even when it feels terrifying. We are worth the truth. We are worth the effort it takes to face it and choose a better path. There's another painful truth we must face, and that's the truth about our fear of change. Change is uncomfortable, it's unsettling, and it often requires us to step into the unknown. But we cannot grow unless we face the truth about our resistance to change. Often we stay stuck in unhealthy patterns because they're familiar, even if they're hurting us. We fear the uncertainty of change. We fear what might happen if we let go of the old, even when it's no longer serving us. Facing the truth means acknowledging that our fear of the unknown is holding us back, and that in order to break free, we must step into discomfort. Facing the truth is also a form of self-compassion. It's easy to be hard on ourselves, to criticize and judge ourselves for the mistakes we've made. But the truth is, we can't truly heal or grow unless we're honest with ourselves and gentle in our approach. Facing the truth doesn't mean beating ourselves up. It means accepting who we are, where we've been, and where we're going without shame. It's about recognizing that we are human, that we make mistakes, and that these mistakes do not define us. Facing the truth allows us to show up for ourselves with kindness and compassion as we work through the pain and move toward a better future. Finally, facing the truth requires great courage. It's easy to stay in the darkness where the truth is hidden because it feels safer. But the real strength comes from stepping into the light, from confronting what's been lurking in the shadows. Courage doesn't mean we aren't afraid. It means that despite our fear, we are willing to face the truth, no matter how difficult or painful it may be. Courage is the willingness to embrace the discomfort of truth, because we know that on the other side of that discomfort lies the possibility of transformation, freedom, and healing. The truth can be a hard pill to swallow, but it is the key to breaking free from cycles of pain, shame, and denial. It is only through facing the truth that we can heal, grow, and ultimately step into the fullness of who we are meant to be.